there, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Catalyst Conversations. And please welcome to our show, the one and only Jess Fraser. Hi, Jess.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm so glad that we're sitting here chatting about money, about
Yes,
finances,
about all the good things. And we get to
all the
talk
good
about
things.
your work, my work. And essentially, I want our listeners, I want our viewers to be able to find something that they can just wrap their arms around and run with it as they
Mhm.
move towards goal achievement. So I'm really
Yeah.
excited and thanks again for being here. I
Yes.
am gonna jump right in here, Jess.
Hmm.
You talk about a number of things, but I asked you specifically for a favorite quote or, a motto, something that just motivates you or is relevant to our conversation today. And this is what you gave me. Don't
Okay.
borrow tomorrow's trouble.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna laugh about it because I'm a master at borrowing tomorrow's trouble. In fact, it's one of my superpowers. But tell me why that resonates with you.
Well, because it's also like I'm like a master at that too. So I totally agree with you. And it's that kind reminder of like we as human beings tend to make mountains out of molehills.
Mhm.
And also, if you're future minded like I am, we're always thinking about like the future possibilities and you start planning for all these possible things that could go wrong in life. And none of them may actually happen. Right.
Right.
So it's like, do not borrow tomorrow's troubles. They'll be there for you if they're there. You have enough to deal with in your here and now. Like just be fully here and now because that's the place to be. That's where things are happening. So I love that. And of course, I am a book geek too. So that came from Rebecca Yarros under the Fourth Wing series. So if you're a book lover out there and you've read that series, you know that's coming from the fourth book or the first book.
The first book. Listen,
Yeah.
I to be honest, my future thinking, and I like that you call it that you're a future thinker. Um,
Yeah.
that forward looking into the distance, it actually has
Hmm.
benefit. But the trouble comes for me anyway, is when I start dealing with everything that could go wrong, and then it prevents me taking action now. So I can
Totally.
imagine how, you know, it's going to be a problem. But I honestly, honest to goodness, years ago, I was working with a coach at the time, and I said to her, I have a vision. I got the vision of what's coming. You need to help me now because everything would go wrong in my mind, and then it would just be a problem. Not
Yeah.
borrowing tomorrow's trouble,
Hmm.
tomorrow's problems. Do you find that it helps if you just stay present and not think about tomorrow at all? Or is there a way for us to stay present and still kind of anticipate and plan for what could be a problem tomorrow?
Yeah. I like that question. Because of me being future minded, I think what helps for me and also with my clients is don't think just about the troubles for tomorrow. The concept is like, think about the successes, the dream, the big goals in the future and the tomorrows that you have. So, those can also that can also be very powerful in helping you to be able to move through any of the struggles that you've got going on, whether it's today or, you're anticipating like a big thing that's going to be happening for you tomorrow, literally, right? You're going to start worrying about those big things. Well, great. Understand the reason why you're doing what you're going to do or what you have to be doing for that future goal or dream that you do have. And I find that that kind of helps with the fog. Because a lot of times we don't understand all the 100 steps to get to that particular goal, or we may
Right.
think we know those steps to get to the goal. And then you get to step 2 or 3 and you're like, oh, U turn. Oh, here's a fork in the road that I didn't plan for. Cause let me tell you, there's been a lot of those in my life and also in
Mhm.
my clients' lives that where, but if you understand that where the basic goal is of where you're going, it's okay to be able, you feel a little more confident in walking in the blind, walking
Yeah.
through the fog and being like, I'm not sure where the step's going to go, but I'm going to try. And who knows if I'm going to step in mud or if I'm going to be stepping on solid ground and then taking a run from there. Who knows? Right. So
Yeah.
I think that the future part of that is like, what's the goals, so that really helps with that too. So being present is super powerful and absolutely important. However, I also find when you do have that end destination, and I think you can relate to that too with your clients when it comes to the financials,
Absolutely.
right? If they're like, okay, my big goal is about a house or retirement or kids schooling or all those different avenues, where they're like, okay, now I can understand, or I'm more willing to risk, to work harder for, to take that unknown step because this is what the benefit's going to be from it. So I'm always like, don't worry about the troubles because they'll blind you if you want them to. Worry about what you're working toward, the big thing, the good thing. Yeah.
Yes, and keep that in the back of your mind, in the front of your mind. Keep that as the guiding principle. Keep that as the thing that's drawing you to it. Anyways, you said that, you've seen that a lot with your clients. Please share with
Yeah.
our audience, what is it that you do?
It's a good question. We got into some great conversations. So, I am a certified life and transition coach. So, I help the dreamers out there to be able to make that big impact that they're looking for in their lives. They may not necessarily know where or what exactly that is, but they're like, I'm needing to make change. And I am here to help them and empower them process through that step, remove the overwhelm. I'm sure you get this with your clients too. They're like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know where to start. I don't know what this looks like or how to do this. And you're that person to be that empowerment to help them walk through the process or run,
Yes,
whatever
I
it is
love
that they
that. And
need.
I think we
Yeah.
all need that. Some of us, it happens with the people that are already in our circle. We kind of naturally have a coach personality within our group of friends. And if that's you, then kudos to you, lucky you. But then there are the other of us, others that, you know what, we need to seek that out because transitions are hard. Change is messy. Life
Yeah.
is a big bowl of spaghetti that's just all intertwined
Mhm.
and tends to not. And sometimes you just have to bite it off so you can manage that
Yeah.
bite. But I definitely see the need and the benefit of having someone there to guide and support you through these life transitions. What are the typical transitions that your clients are dealing with when they reach out to you?
Well, that can be honestly like a hodgepodge of a whole bunch of different things, So, anywhere from career transition to they're finishing school and
Mhm.
maybe what they want to get into, they don't want to actually get into that field anymore. Right. So then they're
Oops.
like, I don't know where to go from here.
Mhm.
Um, Also, the scenario of social expectations is a big one with my clients. So they're like, I'm thinking I'd like to do something like this, but I don't know if my friends and family are going to support me. And
Mhm.
so, it can be really any kind of life change that they're working through at that time that I can be very gladly helping them, be able to brave or even just explore it if they don't understand it or want to know more. So
Right.
it's really, those who change or are in transition for sure.
Yeah, I can see just about there could be any number of life events that can kind of put us at a
Yeah.
crossroads where we could feel out of our depth, or probably
Yeah.
just ill-equipped to deal with it. When you bring in a social expectations, boy, it might seem like nothing, but they are big considerations. So again, having that guide is phenomenal. One of the things you talk about is courage. You talk
Yeah.
about having the courage to get through these transitions, but
Yeah.
specifically, let's explore invisible courage. What? Listen, I grew up on the Incredible Hulk when I was growing up. None of that was invisible. Not only was the strength and the mass casualty very visible, but once you got that kind of strength and courage, it was hard to miss. At least that's the way it is portrayed. So tell me
Mhm.
what you're thinking of when you talk about invisible courage.
Yeah. Well, and when I'm going to take off that analogy that you're talking about, where it's like the Incredible Hulk, and they're like, oh, right.
Yeah.
Courage is actually not the one valid act that is going to change everything for you. It's about the tiny little things that you do along the way that nobody else sees.
Mm.
So that's why I kind of call it invisible, though it really isn't on the back end. Rachel Hollis once said, she goes, someone had asked me, how did you manage your overnight success? And she's like, my overnight success took me 10 years to get to. Right. So it's like, the invisible acts of courage is about all of the tiny things that you do behind the scenes that nobody's going to see, the things that you get out
Mhm.
of bed for that you're like, I'm totally dreading this right now. I don't know if I can have this really important and tough conversation, but I know I need to. And then you're preparing for that conversation. You're getting up out of bed to have that conversation or to, you know, write that resignation letter or to be able to. There's so many, a thousand different things that could be about picking up the phone or doing the research for something or saying yes to an opportunity or saying no to something. Eh, Those are some of the things that people don't see behind the scenes. We were
Yeah.
going to say, talking about my tour across Canada as an example, you know, people were telling me that's such a brave thing for you to do. And you're like, that's amazing. I could never do it. And you're like, well, this took 10 years to do. Literally, the steps and all the processing and all the backstepping and failures and detours that I was taking behind the scenes, nobody was seeing those things happen when they did. So the invisible courage is about getting up every day and doing the things you need to do, being the person you need to be in those particular moments, even if it may feel like it's fake or it's temporary. You're like, okay, put on that favorite song and I'm going to boogie my heart out to get that energy up to brave writing that letter or that page for the book that you've always been wanting to write or whatever that is to try to keep yourself going. So, you talked about, having cheerleaders in your group and whether that's your friends or having coaches, but sometimes you've got to be your own cheerleader with this
Yeah.
process. And then behind the scenes, that's where it counts. Us as coaches are there to hold you accountable, to help reaffirm that you're moving in the right direction, giving you that. We can give you motivation, but really it's about what you're going to do with it when you
Yeah.
go at the end of the day. And I was going to actually say something too when you were chatting about that too, is it's great to have friends and family that are like coach like to help you. However, there's so much power in having coaches like yourself and I, advisors, on your side too, because we hold that non-bias. Your friends, your family, they're there, but they have biases in your best interests. So this is also really powerful to have those individuals in your court as well. And I know that's a bit of an off of what we were talking about, but that invisible courage, it really is about you getting back up even after failures, dancing off the humiliation moments, the imperfect moments, and being able to find that resilience in small ways every single day.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's kind of like when what they say about the duck that you see on the river or on the top of the water.
Yeah.
It's looking like, all is at peace. It's just zen on top, but it's paddling like crazy underneath, going through all the logistics to get to where it wants to
Yeah.
go. I think we underestimate the power that is in doing those small things consistently. To be honest, for
Hmm.
some of us, getting out of bed is massive courage.
Yeah.
We're dealing with so much. So, in your experience with your own acts of courage, a big one,
Mhm.
and I'd say a collection of catalyst moments for you kind of culminated in your trip across Canada. Now, I
Yeah.
want to I want to kind of backtrack here because, like you said, we saw the big act. We did not see
Yeah.
the small steps. What
Hmm.
was that seed that initially planted within you that said, I should go across Canada by myself in a van with my cat?
Yeah, with my little kitty. Um, the catalyst behind that. I'm trying to think of like, is it one big moment? And here's the truth of it. any decisions that we're making, whether it is the financial decisions, they're all going to be based off of emotions. We're
Yes,
just emotional
100%.
beings. Yeah, like
Yes.
us as mammals, this is how we operate. And the reason that I share that is like my real story is there was a massive change in my life where at the time, my husband and we had separated and we thought it was going to be a final thing. And I, for the very first time in my adult life, was a single woman about to live on my own, completely on my own, because my daughter was also going away for school to college. And I was like, what do I do? Where do I go? Who do I want to be? And how am I going to friggin' make this happen? You know? And I remember sitting down and doing what I would call like a survival plan, being like, okay,
Mhm.
I can, I can go back into the corporate world. I can, make those really that big figures that I used to make. I could do all these things. I can work part time. I going through and going through and going through, but none of them lit me up,
Right.
right? And then I was like, what if I gave myself the permission to just like wildly, what would I wildly do if I could, if I had the opportunity to do something crazy and different and that didn't restrict me? And that was
Mhm.
where van lifing came up. So I was like, van lifing has always been a dream of mine that I thought I could never tap into because of my current dynamics of my life and demands and everything that was needed of me as a person. And then I was like, wait a second, maybe I can do something crazy like this. And so the more that I started going into, I guess, my passion plan, the more that I really kind of recognized I could make something like this actually happen. The key, though, to it was that I wasn't necessarily familiar with that type of lifestyle, what was needed. Everything was new, new, new. Whereas
Mhm.
that survival plan, I'd done stuff like this before. I could do that again, but it wasn't lighting me up. And so the catalyst was honestly that separation with my husband at the time, which nice news stories that we've now rekindled our love. But at the time, I didn't think that was going to happen. That wasn't in the plans for us. And you know, I was forced to make a decision because we were selling our family home. And so I'm like, what are we going to be? What do I need to do right now? And I can plan and I can work on one avenue and one stripe of life. And I can also work in a different stripe of life too. So it's like, what would be the traditional? And I was like, I don't want traditional. I want something completely different. And so I decided I needed and I wanted to travel across Canada. I wanted to see Canada for the very first time, aside from my own province. And um, figure out and go through all the different problem solvings to get there. And then, of course, like, how do I do this and make money at the same time? And that came through with the book touring. I was touching that, but then I was like able to experience some really cool things at the same time because I was braving new, even though I didn't know what those steps were. The future planning for that was almost impossible because I didn't know what to
Right.
do with that. Yeah.
Yeah, there
So
was
that was the
no way
catalyst.
you could anticipate like everything that could possibly happen because there's just no way.
Oh,
You're
yeah. Let
stepping
me tell
into
you.
literally unknown
Yeah.
territory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But unknown territory to me, like,
Yeah.
and that's the truth behind a lot of our goals and our dreams is that we may be the first time to go through this, but chances are there are multiple people in the world or even in your community that have done the same things before. So that's another part of it is like find those individuals that align with those particular goals. And that's exactly what I did. I was like, okay, I'll reach out and I threw out a story on my social media. I was like, this is what I'm planning to do. And I was like, oh my gosh. I remember after posting that story, I was like, what am I doing? Right. And then all of a sudden, I had a friend of mine who reached out and said, actually, you should talk to this person. I met them. They're full-time van lifers and they actually run a whole community. I was like, okay. And then as soon as I did, they're like, actually, this weekend, we actually have a van life community meetup. You should come. And I was like, oh no, I don't know if I'm ready. And that's the other thing, ladies and gents, like start before you're ready. I was
Just
like,
do it.
I don't have these fancy vans or anything like that. I brought my caravan and I slept in the back of my caravan and I'm just giving you guys like the idea was like it wasn't perfect right from the get-go, but this community nurtured me and they literally helped me find the right converted van for me at the time and helped me put things in. And when you talk about like setbacks and unexpectancies, traveling across Canada, I had a slew of them. You know, Hurricane Fiona in Halifax, girl, I was in the center of that thing when it
Oh my
happened,
goodness.
right? I went to, I was in Edmonton, and I was in wildfires. Literally on my phone, we were getting alerts to, warn us that some actual places in Alberta were actually being evacuated. And then, of course, I go just down south along to Alberta or to Calgary down south there a little bit more. And then making my way into BC, there were floods that I was working through. There's so many things like that you cannot plan for, but you
Mhm.
still got to work through them, right?
Yeah, you know what? Well, this just came to me. Very, very curious thought at this point for me.
Yeah.
If
Mhm.
let's just play the if game. If you had known that these things would have happened along the way, would
Yeah.
you have gone? Would you have started if there was some way that you would know you would be involved you would be in the middle of a hurricane, you would be exposed to wildfires and flooding, not to mention all the other
Yeah.
things that happen. Would you have gone?
Yeah. My first response to that, my knee jerk response is heck yes. Right. But that's because I'm a dreamer. And I've also seen past successes of my own, of my wild, crazy, non possible dreams actually happen. So that's one of the reasons why I'd say, yeah, I'd still try for it. I'd still go. But I will tell you that there were many times in those moments as I was going through things like in Winnipeg, my heater broke. It was minus like 12 degrees still at night Celsius that I couldn't sleep without heat. Like it just wouldn't be possible. And I
Right.
remember literally like, what do I do? I am literally 2,000 kilometers solidly away from anybody that I know.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I I'm in and actually that particular day I was parked ready to settle in for the night, which I knew I couldn't do that at that point if I couldn't fix the heater. But then I realized where I was staying that night was going to be a place where is a local hangout for the teenagers on the weekends where they have big bonfires and they drink. And I was like, oh, they were also there, they were rowdy, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to find a hotel room and I'm
Right.
going to figure this out tomorrow and tour my book at the same time. Like I literally spent a whole week in Winnipeg,
Hmm.
and my routine was get up at the crack of dawn, go down to my van, try to figure out the heater. I was literally pulling things out of the driveway and trying to
Oh
fix things.
my
And literally then racing upstairs, having a shower and having to mentally reset to go to an author signing event, turn on my happy, talk to people, make things work, and literally go back to that hotel room exhausted. I repeated that whole routine 4 days in a row. So I was going into each of these events, failing at getting the heat up, spending this money on hotel rooms that I wasn't expecting,
God. Right.
and literally having conversations at the end of the night with my therapist going, I don't know if I can do this. I think I may have to turn around. I
Right.
I really am not sure that I can. And here's the one thing that I would say to anybody when you start hitting some of these speed bumps and unexpectancies. I want you to ask yourself, would you regret looking back at that moment and saying, I regret that I turned around and didn't go?
Yeah.
Because what I will say is if you go through it and you're like, I'm not going to regret this because I tried everything I could and I was ready to move back. I was ready to make that U-turn. But I was like, oh, you know what? I think I'd like to do this. I think I would like to, give it one more try. And I
Yeah.
literally I went down to the hotel room or the hotel concierge and I'm like, can you book me for one more night? One more night. And I made some decisions. I'm like, I'll go without heat. I'm going further down south along Canada it'll be warmer. The weather is getting warmer now that it's getting, closer into like the May, June at times.
Right.
And literally that day, that morning, I got up to start that whole routine again, went to go and start that heater, did some more tinkering and working. Did that thing not work? I was that crazy lady. in a hotel parking lot, dancing like a mad woman with all of my stuff scattered across this hotel parking lot, 2,000 kilometers away from family and friends. And I was dancing like a crazy lady because that success is so much sweeter when you work through those tough times. But you need those
Mhm.
tough times to really appreciate those
Yeah,
moments. And
yeah.
that was like one of the toughest parts of all of my tour across there. But mentally, I had to work myself through that game. But if you noticed, I actually realized too, I also had a support base. I had that van life community that was helping me out, but I also had my therapist too during that time too, where one of
Yeah.
our sessions was there and I was like, here's the raw moments. Here's where I'm at. Do I turn around or do I not?
Right.
Right. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful. What would you say?
Mhm.
What did you gain? What, not so much what did you learn? What did you come away with from that trip? What
Mm.
did, how did Jess come away from this experience?
Hadriana, I'm going to go back to something you said really early on in this podcast where you'd said that we're a lot tougher than we realize, that we don't give ourselves enough credit. This whole experience, working through the conversion of my van, traveling across Canada, and this is just me personally, but it's my clients experience these aha moments too that are real, that you experience these moments and you're like, whoa, I am far more capable than I give myself credit for. You, as the listener right now, you are far more capable than you give yourself credit for. You are very resilient. You are having a tough day. My goodness, I tell you, sweetheart, you are tougher than this tough day because you've had tough days in the past and you survived them to get to this moment. So you can do this again. So that was a real aha moment of me, like just many of these moments going, I just did this. I didn't need another person in my life to switch out a tire. I learned how to do that. I figured it out. So that was a huge affirmation for me that I can use
Mhm.
again and again. I can go back to and be like, I did this. So you can do too.
Yes. And to be honest with you, sometimes it's so easy. Did you, I'm going to ask this. I think I know the
Okay.
answer. Did you journal through this?
Oh, of course.
You
So any of you guys that
know
don't
what?
know, like I'm a huge journaler. Been journaling for like over a decade. I do have a published journal myself, um, which is what I was actually touring too. But it's amazing too to go back to those entries now.
Yes.
And I was like, oh man, that's what I was thinking. Like I forgot some of these tiny details too. And then, I was like, oh man. And then there's certain ways that you articulate a situation or those aha moments that you write down too that you really do experience.
Yeah. I the reason why I thought of that is today
Yeah.
is okay. So last week I sat at a coffee shop because I was just in between appointments. I sat at a coffee shop and I had not done my journal entry that morning. So I brought my journal with me and I was just doing my entry. And I just looked back and I read an entry. I think it must have been from the year before. And I thought to
Mm.
myself, girl, you're so wise. Read through because I read through what I was processing at the time. I was going through a difficult time and I wrote that out. And then I
Mm.
wrote this line, which is one of my quotes: don't let your contributing factors be your determining factors. And I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh my goodness, why am I not wise like that all the time? But to be honest with you, I find great encouragement in revisiting the past successes. I also find that it's not our natural positioning. We don't
Mm.
naturally go back to the times where we have succeeded. We typically go back to the times when we have failed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, when we don't have a practice of journaling those successes, we miss out on that muscle memory, that experience memory that reinforces, yes, you can. You've done it before, you can do it again. So
Mm.
we're every day. we're going through and having these experiences of bravery in ourselves, but we are not always remembering, we're not always bringing it to mind and reaffirming our capacity for massive courage. So, you tell me,
Mm,
how do we make the small acts of courage count? How do
mm.
we actually use those tiny building blocks, kind of like, Legos, and actually build it into something that has a firm foundation and a strong structure?
Celebrate the small stuff. Celebrate
Yes.
the milestones. Honestly, too many people that I come across in conversations, whether it's at author signing events or clients, where they're like, I can't, they put a rule and this is self-imposed. If this is you as a listener that's hearing this, like, I'm going to tell you, remove that rule that you can't celebrate something until it's completed. Because let's face it, some of your goals, and let's just think of some of your clients as well, like if their goal is to be saving for retirement, well,
Mhm.
retirement could be 20, 40, some odd years away for this particular person. And
Mhm.
if this is you, you're not going to celebrate the fact that maybe you've hit certain amount of retirement funding at a certain point of time. Why not? Go out for dinner and celebrate. Buy that new book as a celebration. You know, celebrate with that partner of yours and do something fun because it's those little moments that you will start to remember and start to make it fun. These invisible tiny moments of courage and things that you do, these little blocks as you're adding them up, they seem super, super heavy if you're not allowed to celebrate them until the end desired goal. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that the idea is that you're supposed to celebrate every step or that you're supposed to you know, it doesn't take away from the fact that you're going to have this big successful feeling by the time that that one thing is done. But what that does is it keeps the momentum going forward. It
Yeah.
acknowledges the work you've done up until that point in time. And for the days when we're talking about, it's tough to get out of bed. Well, you know what? Maybe you need to be celebrating a little harder in those moments to help you get out of bed and stay out of
Yeah.
bed to do that task you've been avoiding. And when you do that task, oh, great, you're going to go and have that coffee now. Awesome. Right? Like it doesn't have to be massive, but you have to do this because it helps you to acknowledge. And because you just mentioned too earlier, where it's called your negative bias. It's
Hmm.
scientifically proven. We're going to remember the bad stuff,
Yeah.
right? And I remember all the bad stuff of that tour. Like I just reenacted a whole moment of this bad, crappy thing that was happening at that time. I remember it. But I also remembered that success. Why? Because I friggin' celebrated with that happy dance in the parking lot. It
Yep.
doesn't have to cost you anything to celebrate it either. So that is the way to keep the momentum going, acknowledge your process. And you can acknowledge it with other people. It doesn't have to just all be yourself, right? If you
Yeah.
got some really great people in your circle of support that are going to be like, oh my gosh, you did this, Jess? Amazing, right? Like, let's go and do this. Let's have that coffee. Let's, you know, go suntanning on the beach today because of this.
Yeah, I would go. If the weather's good, I'm going. I love that you shared that because when I'm working with clients, we actually build in the celebrations.
I
Um,
love that.
it's part of how you're actually going to
Love it.
achieve your goal. It's part of optimization. And if you want to
Yeah.
get things done quickly, if you want to be as efficient as you can be, you have to have refueling moments. Pit stops on the racetrack, or these, I'm not a runner, but if you're running a marathon, you grab the water from the volunteers on the side, you refresh yourself, and you run again. I think it
So
is
good.
phenomenal that we can choose to celebrate. And trust me, it's a choice. But it's a
Is.
choice you need to make if you want to be one of those super goal achievers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to add, we have been kind of, I would say, we have been bamboozled with the idea that success is only attained at the finish line. I don't think
Yeah.
that's where success is at all. I think success is in the being and the doing, not in the
Yeah.
done, but in the doing, not in the, it's the success is not the butterfly. Success is the entire journey that takes us to becoming that thing. And it never ends. Because
Yeah.
what about the next goal? Because now you've achieved an amount in your bank account for retirement, does that mean you're going to just stop achieving? No, there's always that next thing, and
Yeah.
that new dream. And I certainly hope for everybody there's a new dream, because we
Yeah.
kind of lose our purpose. We lose our desire to achieve or to perform or to just go out and do an experience if we don't have something we are working towards. I don't want to say striving, because that kind of has a different feel to it, but there's something
Yeah.
else you want to experience and achieve for yourself. That's kind of how we find joy and purpose in life, no?
Yeah, and I'm reading a shirt as you're saying this, and it's like wealthy on purpose. It's
Yeah.
intentional, right? You're like
Yes,
it
ma'am.
the wealth doesn't happen overnight. We know that it doesn't. It takes tiny steps to get there, but who's to say that these aren't wealthy moments as they're happening? And I wanted to add to this too, because it's something that I acknowledge also for myself. I'd say I don't do this now hardly ever, but I see it a lot more with clients is where they punish themselves for the failure or the step back or the detour or the U-turns that end up happening. And I'm like, practice that self-compassion and that fierce kindness there for yourself. Like the fact that you failed is because you actually tried at something. And
Yes.
the learnings that you will gain from that doesn't mean that you got to stop that goal. It just means you got to find another way or try something new or a different angle or whatever that may be. And I'm even thinking with your clients as well, like if they're having a tough time or say they lose a job and they're like, I can't do any more of these investments because of that. Well, wait a second. Is that like it's every point in our lives is temporary. The
Yes.
successes, the failures, they're all temporary. So it's not because you don't have to throw away that whole future big goal that you've been working together on
Mhm.
because of this temporary state of lack of success or whatever you want to call it. It just means you may have to change things up. You may have to alter things temporarily. And then when things are back up and running or you've changed that direction, you can now alter those things and move forward.
Yeah.
Success isn't linear and it isn't a race. And if it is, I guess it would be a marathon, but it sure as heck is unpredictable. And you have to change your pace in order to experience where you're going and all that's happening at that time. And sometimes that'll be fast, and other times it will be slow, but understand you're still going and moving. You're making movements. It's good. It's all good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's life in motion. Life in
Life in
motion.
motion.
And as long as we
Yeah.
keep taking the steps, to be honest, I don't know. I'm gonna say I don't think there's a wrong step, because
Yeah.
every step that we take with intention will be of benefit to us. It'll either move us forward or it'll help us learn. It'll help us adjust. It'll help us grow. So I understand
Yeah.
sometimes we can take missteps, but I struggle with the idea of, that's a mistake, that it's a mistake. I was thinking the other day about, if I could go and do anything over in my life, would I? And I don't know that I would, because I don't know what the outcome
Yeah.
would be,
What's
right?
the consequence to that? What else is going to happen if you make
Exactly.
that change in all those other choices that you made? Yeah. Oh, I
Yes.
have a question. Can I ask you a question?
Oh dear, let's do it.
Given your clients, what are some invisible acts of courage that you see that they do? I would love to know.
Oh, yeah. They do it all the time and they don't give themselves enough credit. So simply by going to the groceries and not jumping down that rabbit hole of buying everything they see. Even the
Mm,
choice every time a client chooses to use their money intentionally is an act of courage, because
yeah.
inevitably it means that they are either choosing to walk in their purpose, as opposed to just going for that thing that they happen to want. Every time a client chooses to not let the trigger be the thing that actually fires off, that is an invisible act of courage. And it can be the
Yeah.
smallest thing. For me, it's walking by Cheetos when I walk down the aisle in the supermarket. Because here's the thing, not only is it well waste of money, it's also not good for me. Like I am
Yeah.
literally putting poison in my body
Yeah.
only for the experience at the start of the tunnel. So I want the crunch, I want the salt, I want the flavor. It has no other benefit. So the every act of intentional use of money is an
Yeah.
act of courage. And for some people, that is automating their investing. It's for some people, it is saying to a child, not today, as opposed to just giving them what they want because our money story was of so much lack that we decided to overcompensate and give our children everything they could possibly want. That is us challenging and now making decisions with intention. So I see the small acts of courage, they show up. But the truth is that is how we make decisions with our money is often reflected in how we're making decisions in our relationships, how we're making
Yeah.
decisions with our children, how we're interacting on the job. A lot of times the same avoidance strategies that we see when it comes to sitting down and making a plan for our spending or making a plan with our partner, you might see the same avoidance strategies in how we're working with our colleagues on the job, or even how we're
Yeah.
interacting with clients as business owners. I don't see it as separate, Jess. I see us as humans who are whole,
Yeah.
and I see a lot of our challenges and successes having that ripple effect because we are one. We are one being. So I love the idea of those small acts of courage and that cumulative effect right down my alley because it's in the small steps that we actually move forward. Tell me a little
Hmm.
bit about, you know, the need we have to find the support. So I know I talked about, some people have it innately in their spaces.
Yeah.
But to be honest, that impartiality, for better or
Hmm.
worse, I think influences our ability to actually reach that goal. So,
Hmm.
when do we know that it's time for us to invest in some support?
I think key indicators is like feeling overwhelmed.
Mhm.
I hear too often from people, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. That type of verbiage is an indicator you could use some support right now. And you don't
Right.
have to be like burnt out and hit the complete bottom before help is to come. You can do that and ask for that help way before then. This can be the invisible act of courage of picking up the phone or doing your research and just being like, I'm going to brave emailing this person and seeing if, what their services are about and how I can help. So I that kind of is where I stand when it comes to that. I think, think of how you're discussing and talking about your current life. If it is in a space of like negativity and loss and, fear or, directionless, that's probably a good indicator that on top of your current circle of support, whether it's professional support or family and friends, it may be a
Mm.
good time to invest in a coach or an advisor to help you with those specific goals. And I have people who say to me, like, I don't really have goals, but if you're feeling stuck, there's something there. Right. If
Yes.
you're feeling overwhelmed, there's something there. So work through those concerns and emotions with that professional to
Mhm.
help you understand what that is. And then you may be able to get some clarity of what that direction's supposed to look like. I can almost think that, like, when you sit down with people and they're like, I don't know, like, where I'm going to get this extra money. And you just said earlier where you're like talking about decisions of intentional spending in the grocery store. Well, maybe they never thought of that until they've actually had this conversation with you and be like, oh, okay, yeah, like maybe it is a matter of like saying no to a couple of these things or to the children and being like, you know what, you've got that toy right now. We don't need to buy another one. But they
Right.
don't always think about the things that are so in front of them until someone from the outside can help them, guide them, and point those moments out. So, yeah, think of like what you're saying to yourself about your life. And if there's some negative verbiage that you're using and you're finding it's coming up more and more frequently than what's usual, it doesn't even just mean to be what's usual. That's a good indicator that you're ready for that moment or that change or that next step.
Yeah, the next level of support. I also find, like for me personally, along my wealth journey, I also found that there came a time when no one in my immediate circle had any experience with having achieved the goal that I was striving for,
Yeah.
right? So, yes, they wanted to help, but they had no specific resources or tools or even techniques
Yeah.
that they could recommend with some confidence. So I found myself like I couldn't even envisage it. I wrote about this in my book. I had no one in my circle that could exemplify it or assist with it. And I can imagine, especially if we're looking at emotional trauma, financial trauma, or what have you, this stuff trickles
Yeah.
down. Your immediate circles, usually your family and close friends, well, typically we are attracted to people in similar or very similar situations. But if your goal is to operate or get to the place where you're outside of that and having conquered that, you may need support that is specifically designed to get you there. I think sometimes we just outgoal our organic support systems.
Yeah. I agree. And sometimes the goals, you were just saying something there that I thought was really good to kind of point on a couple of things. One, mm, just like losing my train of thought with that. You oh, one thing is like don't ask for advice for something that someone's never done before. And the other part to this, and that was in one of my I hope it's okay. Can I swear on this? It's a
Go
book.
for it.
Yeah, it's Get Rich Lucky Bitch. And one of the things that she said is like, don't be asking for advice from somebody that has never done that before or even believes in that goal that you're working towards.
Right.
A- And then the other point that I was going to say too was about the sometimes when you're doing something new, you need somebody from the outside to help you and also give you the honest on it. Sometimes our
Yeah.
family and friends don't want to tell you or hurt your feelings on something, whereas the coaches, we can give it to you black and white. And we come from a
Mhm.
very caring place that when we're
Right.
saying, hey, you're overspending in this area, or you can do this, or you know what, I'm going to call you out on it because this is what it's at, right? So there's that other part too, is that as coaches and advisors, we're not afraid to go there with you. Why? Because we know that if we can get through that barrier, you're going to get to the other side even better. So it's like we're
Yeah.
there for you.
Yeah. 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 When I coach couples, I say to them, you can just aim all the arrows this way. Aim all the arrows at me, because when we're done this session, the two of you need to make nice and sleep next to each other, and both of
Yeah.
you need to be alive when you wake up in the morning. So send
Yeah.
them all this way, and we giggle about it.
Such a good
But
idea.
the truth is, we are trained to take it. We are
Yes.
trained to not
Yep.
only take it, but to help you figure out healthy ways to deal with all of the stuff that keeps coming up. And for a
Yeah.
lot of us, even sharing the things that are hurting, sharing the things or the places where we struggle, that is an act of courage. I
Mhm.
was brought up the way we were brought up, like you don't hang your dirty laundry outside. That's the parable that they use. So the
Yeah.
idea of talking to a therapist was a no-no.
Oh
However,
yeah.
I remembered when I first started working with a therapist, maybe it was a few years ago now. And I said to my mom, I finally said to her, Mom, I'm working with a therapist. She was happy for me.
That's so
because
good.
she said she wished she had had that um, when she was growing up and had access to it,
Mm.
and was brave enough to make use of it if it had been available. Times have changed, and
Yeah.
even though other people's stories were, their stories, their experiences, they are valid and they are real, they don't have to be your story,
Yeah.
right? So
And the other
your
people's fears don't have to be yours.
that's right. And the
Hmm.
ideas, what they experienced, it doesn't have to be what you will experience. So these acts of courage are very, actually, they're very inspiring. Just having this conversation, thinking through
Hmm.
all the ways we've won, all the ways that we have won, and we
Yeah.
keep winning. Let's talk a little bit before we wrap up. Let's talk a little bit about finding that alignment.
Hmm.
um there comes that time where, and as a transition coach, life in transition, let's talk about that transition. A lot of times transition gives us an opportunity to make things to come back into alignment. And one of the big transitions, like in your case, separation, possible divorce, the children
Yeah.
leaving, and becoming an empty nester, having to change a job, I see those as opportunities. How
Hmm.
do your clients are coming to you? Of course, there is stress, there's frustration, there's anxiety. How do you help them see the whole like buffet table of opportunity that is opening up to them when they're in the depths of,
Yeah.
they're living this thing now?
Well, I don't think there's like one specific tool that I can like give you because there's a couple different tools that we use in the coaching world. Where and one thing that first comes to mind is like metaphors is a
Mm,
good one to get some people out of their like current frame of mind and thinking and having them understand like okay what's your current metaphor in life right now, and it could be like I'm a gray rock, big boulder, can't be moved, I'm sitting in the middle of the road and I'm disrupting traffic, right? And
mhm,
you're like, okay, so tell me more about that rock. Like that rock sounds like it doesn't want to be there. Tell me more about that. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, and this is where people are like, wow, like I don't know, but if, and that's where I always say with my clients, like trust me, like I'm going to take you to places that you haven't been before, but we got to figure out how to talk to this rock. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm kind of going from there. And then there's another technique about embodiment and movement that we use in coaching practices. And in literally, like, I'll have clients. I'm like, you know what? Right now, the energy of where you're at, and all my clients right now are virtual. So I'd be like, is there another room that you can go to or another seat in that room that you can move to? And they're like, what? I'm like, the energy right now is not good for you. So let's move this around. And there's an activity that I've done with clients that works really well called crossing the line. And like
mhm,
sometimes I've had clients and like, I don't like, I'm like, you need to create a line on your floor for me right now. I'm like, what? I'm like, dirty socks in the hamper, like pull them out. Let's make a line on the floor. And this is you making your declaration right now that you are moving from this point and you're not going back there. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
whatever it is that we need to declare, like we figure out what it is that they need to declare for themselves. And then I literally have them get up and cross that friggin' line. It could be a little tiny plip across the line. I'm like, do whatever you need to do, like a high jump, star, and go for it, right? But it's a crazy how it changes the energy just in
Mhm,
that session alone that allows us to now move forward and get on to the stuff that they're really wanting to focus on. And
yeah.
it's tiny things, and it really is just about like helping reframe the mindset. Remember, I was telling you earlier, nothing is permanent. So that state of mind, if you're coming into a session and you're like, I'm a Debbie Downer, I can't see anything better in my life right now, life is
Mm,
poop, right? Be like, okay, you know, I take some of these strategies to help shift even just temporarily that energy, because that'll help us be able to move forward. And we can do that in our own lives too, right? Like just
Yeah.
little energy birds. Okay, you know what? You're feeling down and out. Go to the coffee shop and work today, right? Or,
Yep.
maybe you need to go for a jog or go for a walk before you go and make that big decision. I guarantee you, those tiny little things that you make, again, we're talking about tiny steps, will help influence and go and make the right direction of where you want to be going.
Yes, I really love that. Movement, life in motion,
Yeah.
not stagnating and sitting
Yeah.
in a quagmire of negative thoughts.
Yeah.
Being intentional, those small acts of bravery and courage that we take every day. I think that's a beautiful way to wrap this up. Again, it's not just the big things, it's the little
Mhm.
things coming together. Jess, thank you so much for sharing
You're
as
welcome.
transparently as you did. I really appreciate it. Tell our viewers, tell our listeners where they can find you on the interweb streets, because you do virtually serve your clients. So anyone
Yeah.
from anywhere can actually work with you. Where can we find you?
They can. Anywhere on social media or my website. So it's Your Inner Vitality. Go and check it out. I'm there on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. My website is yourinnervitality.com. Strike up a conversation with me. Send me a DM. Say hello. Let us know how this podcast was for you. What were your takeaways? I'd love to hear it.
Yes, that's exciting. And if you were to probably give us one tidbit, one something that we can ruminate on, something we can think about, maybe something that can get us moving, getting life in motion, what would that be?
Mm. I'm going to go back to my quote,
Yes.
like, don't borrow tomorrow's troubles. Just don't. Keep them there. Keep them there. And if you need to, like, throw on your favorite song and do a happy dance like nobody's watching.
Yes.
Trust me, it'll help with any decision you need to make right after that dance.
Yeah, and it's proven. Like I know it's just the way our physiology is. But
Yeah.
yes, don't borrow tomorrow's trouble. Thanks so much once again. I really appreciated having you here. And to
Yes,
our
thank you.
viewers and our listeners, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please come on back for our next episode of Catalyst Conversations. Take care now.